All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, Jamie. So, this episode, let's talk about the internships. We have talked about some of the changing trends, but today we'll talk about internships. What's happening with the internships?
Yeah, we'll also get into a couple of other what I'll call big stories. AWS and OpenAI are teaming up, and we'll get into the earning season for the big tech, that being like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta. They're all releasing their earnings.
Yeah, and the AI chips are actually in focus again. They're becoming the new battleground. Nvidia, Amazon, Google, and Huawei, of course. This is the new battleground.
Yeah. And cyber AI is certainly heating up. I think everybody knows and heard about Mythos, as we talked about before. But OpenAI is also in this space, so we'll talk about what they're doing.
Hey, and everybody loves a good gossip, Jamie. How about let's do some, like let's talk about some of the rumors going around about the OpenAI phone and things like that.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And the other thing too that we'll get into is Microsoft released some new agents inside of Word, and we'll also talk about Codex and the changes that are happening within Codex from OpenAI.
That and more. Stay tuned for a quick introduction. Greetings. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay up to date on the AI, this is the podcast for you. I'm Shadab Hussain. I'm the director of AI at Microsoft, and I'm your co host.
Hello, everybody. Jamie Basilico, as you know already. I'm the other co-host here for the AI Files. My day job is a data and AI technical specialist and architect. And as a reminder, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views and opinions expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft.
Okay, so let's talk about the internships. What's happening with the internships? We have talked about different patterns that are emerging in the career landscape, but internships is another area which is showing a lot of concerns, right? So, for example, um, the trend wise, if you see the internship postings on early career job platform like Handshake, they were down 16% earlier this year. And it's a continuous decline since 2023, its data shows. This is as per the Wall Street Journal reporting. And it is the same trend observed on the job site like Indeed, etc. So internships are essential for the early entry career breaks. That's where the students get some kind of experience in the corporates, and a lot of them actually convert that into the job. So internships, if there are no internships, that deprives that opportunity for the student to get a hang of what the corporate life would be and convert that into the job. So it affects. Now, that's been a problem, and a lot of I would say leaders have actually raised that as a concern. For example, the previous chief data scientist for the government, DJ Patil, talked about it. He talked about it that internships are disappearing, and he wanted to actually take some initiatives as well. He asked others also. It's been a concern, and the same thing happened actually. So this week also, when there was some actually David Sachs, who's basically the AI czar for this current administration. He also talked about the disappearing job and internship, but that's not true. That's what he said. So Mark Benioff, Salesforce CEO, he actually said that, yeah, that's right. We are hiring 1,000 new grads and interns right now to ride the AI exponential. You are right. They said AI would kill entry level jobs. Meanwhile, these grads and interns are building it. So basically, Mark Benioff is talking about that, hey, as the AIs are, David Sachs said, that this is not true. The unemployment in the early, basically the career, as well as the students who are seeking to enter the workforce, is generally considered down, but it is not. That's what they are arguing about. So, for example, David Sachs talked about the hiring of new college graduates is up 5.6% over last year. He talked about the youth unemployment for degreed 20 to 24-year-old fell to 5.3% from 8.9%. So basically he's arguing against that. Okay, it is not true that 50% of entry level jobs are going away, and Mark Benioff kind of supported him, saying that yeah, that's not true, we are hiring 1,000 new people now. And Mark Benioff also admitted that yes, that is true, that also that this is generally being uh, talked about by the leaders, that okay, the jobs will disappear. Now I remember very well, Jamie, that Mark Benioff himself just few months ago he was talking about, yeah, I'm, AI is really giving us a value, we are letting go the people in the customer service group and this and that because we are reaping the reward. The narrative that was being peddled by those industry leaders were actually harmful, and it kind of created a backlash. And now they are actually now stepping back on that. No, that's not true, AI is actually not killing that, we are basically adding more to the workforce, things like that. So the narrative is now started to change because they see that okay, this is actually going to create a problem. Now similarly, Matt Garman, who's basically the CEO of AWS, he said that Amazon plans to bring on 11,000 software engineering interns in 2026. And he said that it is the same kind of figure in line with the previous years. And he pushed back on the idea that AI will disrupt software engineering jobs. He said the role itself is changing as new tools automate parts of the work. So he talked about like the jobs will be a little different. Being an expert at being able to author a Java code snippet is going to be less valuable in the future than it was maybe a couple of years ago. Instead, he emphasized broader skills such as building applications, solving customer problems, etc. And he says that technical knowledge remains important, particularly when working with the customers using cloud services. Now, something very similar, Jensen Huang in the podcast with Dwarkesh, he also talked about it. He said that this narrative is harmful, that software engineering is going away, because that what would happen is that less people will go to the comp science, then you will have less comp science people, and then the problem is then you will actually end up with a dearth. He gave an example of what happened like 10 years ago when AI was already showing some rapid advancement, and it was being talked about that the first job that will go away is radiologist in the medicine industry. And people said don't become a radiologist because AI will eat that job. And you say that look at what has happened due to that result. Now we are short of radiologists. Okay, it is the number one job and we are short of it because people started pulling back a little bit. So he said that this narrative is harmful. So to be honest, I would say the leaders themselves have pushed that narrative, and now they're trying to push that. And the reason they push that narrative, Jimmy, because they wanted to show that hey, AI is capable of giving you an ROI, and the laziest way of the ROI is layoff, right? So they say that basically you eliminate those jobs, you get your ROI, and now they're realizing that creates a backlash. So this is what the tension in the industry right now.
Yeah, I see this as like a swinging pendulum. There's this dichotomy between we have layoffs and then they're hiring those people back, whether or not they're interns or full time. I think there will always be this ebb and flow. And I think the narrative, as you said and pointed out rightfully so, is that everything we've heard thus far has been doom and gloom. AI is coming to take your job. While there's certainly some elements of truth in that, it's you can't go too far over to the other side and be like, all right, well now we don't need those roles, and that's clearly not the case. You still need, engineers, software engineers, people, and things may change certainly. Like as you mentioned already, maybe you don't need someone to create a Java snippet that will run in the app, but you still need people to understand software coding principles, troubleshooting, being able to architect solutions. That's still going to be needed in some form or fashion. So I see this as an agreement in that overall statement, and yeah, I think whether or not it's Salesforce and the 1,000 new jobs or interns that they're hiring, or Amazon and their 11,000, which by the way, that seems really high to me. But it's showing signs that yes, we still need these skills, and I think that's the thing to walk away. So let's talk about partnerships. So we go from jobs to partnerships. So I think everyone knows OpenAI has had up to this point a very strong partnership with Microsoft. Microsoft was one of the sole investors, at least from the big techs, coming in, and they had sole rights to use and sell OpenAI models, and OpenAI does its training based upon technology within the Azure cloud. That's all changing. This is really predicated on the fact that the OpenAI business model, and we heard a lot of this in the news over the winter, and even starting rumors of it last fall about changing their operating model, going from nonprofit into the model that they have today. It's not totally for profit, but what that does is that opens up the opportunity for OpenAI to make additional strategic partnerships more than just with Microsoft. So this is evident in what we kind of learned this past week is that Amazon is now going to be a strategic partner of OpenAI. And what does that mean? Well, it means other than cash, again, I love that we throw around these big numbers now as like they're nothing, but $50 billion initially, and then another 35 billion in contingent investment. So that's the opening salvo, if you will, on this investment. Now, if you think about what the initial Microsoft investment was, that was 13 or 14 billion. So this is actually a higher initial investment from Amazon than what Microsoft even put in. All right. So what does this really mean? Because other than just the cash, trading hands, it's actually the root of this is a big change. It's actually a co-development of a stateful runtime environment that will be powered by the OpenAI models and delivered by Amazon Bedrock. So these are things that are going to enable persistent context, memory, identity, the compute access that's needed, and then the ability to tie into multiple AI workflows to do the things that most organizations want to do now, which is long-running AI tasks or agents. So this is going to be designed for production-grade AI implementations that is tied into and integrated with the AWS infrastructure, and including the AWS Bedrock Agent Core. So the way I look at this is that if you are a AWS shop already, and you were hesitant to go with Bedrock because OpenAI was not on that platform, well, now you've got that choice. So it's not there yet, by the way. So if you go out there into Bedrock and start looking for OpenAI, it's not going to be on the platform yet, but it will be soon. And when I say soon, that's within a couple of months. So probably I would say mid-summer, if not sooner, it'll be out there. So with this, AWS becomes an exclusive third-party cloud provider for OpenAI's frontier models. And again, the reason why it's an exclusive third-party cloud, again, this is related to the fact that Microsoft still has a relationship, although some of that is also changing, which we're not going to get into now. We did a little bit last time, but that relationship with Microsoft is going to end in a couple of years, based upon the latest legal constructs that came out just this past week. So the bottom line with AWS, it's going to support integration, real-time business systems. And again, think about all of the systems, the applications, and the data that already lives on AWS tied into their underlying infrastructure. Now, one of the other things that makes this interesting, it's not just a matter of, there's a dollar deal into this or the ability to run OpenAI models on AWS, but it's also about the expanded partnership on the infrastructure side. So AWS has Trainium chips, so they're going to be utilizing the Trainium 3, but there's also an expected next-gen Trainium 4, which is going to be, let's just call it in 2027. That could be a year from now or slightly more, but the bottom line is that they're going to continue to improve upon the chips, which will mean improved performance, improved memory bandwidth, as well as in the capacity to be able to run, more advanced AI systems. So, as I said before, this is a joint development. Customized OpenAI models will also be developed for Amazon applications specifically. Now, where that ends up, don't know yet, but I'm sure we'll see some things that are going to be, created specifically for Amazon. Now, this does complement the Nova family of models, so that's still existing. It's not like it's just going to go away. So overall, this certainly benefits the consumer, people that are building already on AWS. One thing to note, pricing for these models have not been announced yet, but I would assume they're going to be competitive, obviously with the likes of Microsoft as an example. So we'll see where it goes. I would expect this to be, able to play around with it in next 2 months, maybe less, maybe a little bit more. But stay tuned.
One of the most consequential turn of the partnership, actually, right? So, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I will tell you, Jamie, and both of us work at Microsoft as well. Um, but the reality is that this uh, allowance by Microsoft to let go its exclusivity, it's not adding up. Okay, something is going on, right? So Microsoft had OpenAI by the balls. Okay, in the legal partnership, if you see, right, there is no way OpenAI can just simply default. Okay, they would have done that earlier if they could, right? Um, but they just could not. OpenAI also need to understand there would have been no OpenAI without Microsoft backing it, right? So but it just doesn't add up. Why would Microsoft let go its exclusivity? Okay, I feel that it is a preparing a ground for something else that is coming. Okay, in the next few months, it could be something anyway. It could be some another partnership, maybe Microsoft Anthropic, maybe something else, maybe Microsoft's own models, something like that. But it just seems half the story. In terms of that. Otherwise, it just seems like OpenAI is the sole winner along with AWS, and Microsoft is kind of losing it. Yeah, they are going to keep the revenue, but hey, it's like killing the golden goose, basically, right? So we will figure out, we will see, but my hunch is that it's just half the story. Um, anyway, let's move on and let's talk about some earning notes, because this week was full of big tech earning. Okay, it was like, consider like earning, basically the earning palooza or something like that, because on Wednesday there were four major players providing their earnings: Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Meta. Let's talk about Microsoft. A quick rundown. Microsoft Cloud revenue hit $54.5 billion, which is up 29% year on year. And remember, Microsoft Cloud is not just the Azure, it is also the other intelligent cloud services also included in it, right? Including the Office and things like that, M365. The Azure and other cloud services revenue grew 40% year on year. And this is a little better, like 1% better than the previous quarter's figure. That itself, at this base, 40% is a lot. Okay, it's a lot. Um, but it's still, there was a muted response to it. And I'll tell you why. Microsoft said also that its AI business surpassed a $37 billion annual revenue run rate, right? Which is huge. And it's up 123% year on year. So more than double in 1 year. It's M365 Copilot, which was a concern actually in the previous quarter. And that's why the stock price had tanked, that it's not gaining the traction, but they came back swinging. Basically, Microsoft said that 365 Copilot paid seats passed 20 million. It's up from 15 million. Okay. And Copilot helped drive the overall growth in the commercial business. So it's a pretty good uptake. They also announced about the Accenture rolling out to 740,000 people, right? In the Accenture. So that's one of the biggest, largest rollout of the Microsoft 365 Copilot. And it is still spending heavily. CapEx was $31.9 billion this quarter, and the management expects about $190 billion in 2026 capex. Going to the Google cloud revenue grew 63% year on year to about $20 billion. Now, of course, it is a smaller base, right? It's much a smaller base compared to the Azure and AWS, but this growth figure basically took the show. And that is why the Microsoft, pretty handsome growth still did not move the figure a lot when it comes to the stock price, because Google kind of overshadowed that in terms of the growth rate. Its cloud backlog is nearly doubled to over $460 billion, which shows a strong future demand. It's saying that search had 19% revenue growth, so there is no impact. It's growing essentially. Its results were basically pretty strong, handsome growth, and their capex is again aligned to around 180 billion to 190 billion dollars, something similar to the range of what Microsoft is spending. AWS revenue grew 28% year on year to $37.6 billion. It's the fastest growth in the last 4 years, in the 15 quarters, and their operating income also rose. Amazon said its chip business, including Graviton, Trainium, and Nitro, they all passed a $20 billion annual revenue run rate. That itself is a huge company of its size if it is spun off. It highlighted big AI infrastructure wins, right? OpenAI, of course, is now going to commit to use to 2 gigabyte of Trainium capacity. So the chips are actually rocking. And this saw the major traction in a lot of things. The customer spend grew about 170% quarter over quarter. They have basically there's a lot of good figures, including the spending also rose, etc. And they're going to continue to spend on the capital investment. Meta reported $56.3 billion revenue, which is up 33% year on year. And it doesn't have a separate cloud segment like, of course, the hyperscaler, but it's AI stories about, how do they use the AI in the business application, like, ads and engagement and recommendation system and things like that, right? They also monetize the AI that way internally, as well as they also provide it as services to their customers, which are basically consumer segment. So it raised its 2026 capex forecast to 125 to 145 billion dollar. Overall, all these companies together, they have committed 600 billion dollar in the span, just this year, Jamie, in the AI infrastructure. So overall, the takeaway is that basically Google look the strongest on AI monetization. It's firing on all the cylinders. Google Cloud growth was amazing. It kind of overshadowed the other growth, but Microsoft and AWS also had their best of the quarters. AWS particularly gained ground in the last 4 years. It was their best quarter in the last 4 years. Microsoft showed the broadest AI revenue base because Azure, Copilot, GitHub, everything is contributing to the growth. Amazon was particularly highlighted on the custom AI chip story. That looked very strong. Meta had strong revenue growth overall. Now, based on all of this, Citigroup has actually increased its projection for the global AI market to $4.2 trillion by 2030. So, this industry remains one of the largest employer and showing it's heartening to see that there is it's not about the earning by this company. It's about seeing because these companies are capturing the demand in the market. So basically what it shows is that the customers are spending. That's what it the bottom line.
Yeah, and I look at this and I hear what you're saying, and I've read and seen the news comes out. It's interesting to see how Wall Street reacts, and what I mean by that is we see stellar numbers for percentage growth, quarter over quarter, year over year for each of these companies, but what the street reacts to is not necessarily how much market share do you have or how much did you grow by, but it's about what you're spending and what the future plans for spending are. And I think, Microsoft is a great example of that this week. And, when you look at the numbers, you're like, wow, they had a really great quarter. And then you look at, well, why did the stock not go up? The markets are really looking at, well, how much are you spending? What are you planning to spend? And are you somewhat stifled or stymied by the lack of hardware compute to be able to solve all of those demand needs, which also then spurs on more spending. So it's sort of like this catch 22 piece is that, well, you can't satisfy the demand unless you spend, but if you spend, you're going to get dinged by Wall Street. So that's my takeaway from
No, that
that.
is true. I mean, it does matter what the stock price is because it creates a wealth for the individuals. But I will tell you that Wall Street is only one indicator of how they receive the news. The thing is that overall, financially, if you see all these numbers look extremely strong, and it highlights the demand. Here is where I differ, right? I mean, the spend. The only concern that the Wall Street keep talking about is, oh, there's too much spend. Without that spend, there is no growth. That's a reality. The infrastructure takes a long time. We know Google has talked about it, Microsoft has talked about it in the last quarter as well, that our growth was kept by the infrastructure that we could provide. There is more demand than supply. And I would say that Wall Street should always take that as a positive because you have a backlog of demand. And if you don't invest, you cannot capture the demand. Okay. Let's talk about
Yeah, no, that's
something
very true. It's cyclical cycle again when you're going to get the resources.
that is true. Okay. Jimmy, just a quick
So
yeah, just a another quick news about I would say it is an important news because it could set the trends. A Chinese court ruled that replacing workers with AI is illegal. Now, this is China's Hangzhou Intermediate Court. It's not the highest Supreme Court or something. It ruled that AI adoption is a voluntary business decision, not a legal basis for terminating employment contracts. It happened because one of the worker was actually replaced by the AI and the company fired it. And what the court is ruling that companies must retrain, reassign, or fairly compensate workers before replacing them with AI. Shifting cost of automation to employees is explicitly unlawful. That's what it ruled. Now, with China's core AI industry valued at 1.2 trillion yuan and 6,200 plus AI enterprises, these rulings definitely set a global precedent. 37% of business leaders actually are planning the AI workforce replacement by end of 2026. Now, this is happening in China. This has no effect in the US, but it underscores a trend that there is protective and regulatory protection is coming. EU AI Act, for example, it takes full effect in August 2026. It will also impose similar worker protections, signaling a worldwide regulatory trend. Now, it doesn't happen in America, right? It's not how the capitalist market work, but who knows? Maybe there would be some inspiration because I think ultimately there has to be some sort of a because society is composed of workers, not just companies.
yeah, very true. It's how everybody actually sees the companies and the workers themselves and what's realistic or not. I think the interesting part here will be, we certainly don't follow exactly Chinese law, but will any of this trickle back into our legal system and laws that may or may not be passed by US based legislators? So, anyway, time will tell on that one. Let's talk a little bit, switch gears into the cyber world as it relates to these AI models uncovering cyber potential issues. All right. So, as we talked about before, Anthropic came out with Mythos. Again, it's still not available to most people. It's only available through Glasswing, which is just a handful of companies that are actually looking at that model. But that model actually aids in finding zero-day vulnerabilities within code. So OpenAI actually has well, I'm going to call an equivalent. It's called GPT-5.5 Cypher or Cyber. There actually was a 5.4 Cyber, but this is a new frontier cybersecurity model, and it's only being made available to a select group of critical cyber defenders, and it will be within the next couple of days that they do that. But Sam Altman has come out and said the company is actually working with government and industry cyber partners to establish trusted access to this model. And as I mentioned before, this is really I look at it as in response to Claude Mythos preview, which really helped to uncover thousands of different severe security vulnerability flaws across a lot of different operating systems and different quote unquote software packages. So this actually builds upon OpenAI Cyber 5.4, which was just released last month because we're recording this in May. And that was allowed to compile and analyze for software vulnerabilities in source code without having the need to have the source code. This is why this is so important. So again, this will be made available shortly. So we'll see how that ripples through a lot of these large organizations.
Yeah, and a couple of other rapid news as well. Beijing has blocked Meta's acquisition of AI startup Manus. Now, I don't know what will happen because they had already started integrating things. Manus is that AI agentic company which Meta acquired, and now it is blocked. I think it just signals that, okay, Beijing is going to be tightening the control on those AI companies because as part of this, Manus would have moved out of Singapore and things like that. So there will be, I think, more tightening of the control from the Beijing side. In the other news, Ming Chi Kuo is a strong analyst who often actually reports on Apple's hardware news, etc. Been often right, and he has actually come out with a quick segment on what the OpenAI might be working. Basically, it says that it might be working on a phone in collaboration with Qualcomm and other companies, and the analyst suggested that it's probably creating its own smartphone with the agents replacing the apps. So, given the track record of this analyst being right about a lot of news, so there is a strong rumor that this could also be potentially right. Now, one more thing I wanted to quickly talk about the rapid news is there is a trial going on between Elon Musk and Sam Altman about the why the OpenAI was basically converted into a profit, right? Elon Musk just cannot accept that fact that he basically lost that opportunity, and he has taken Sam Altman to the court, and the arguments are going on, and Elon Musk just keep talking about you cannot steal a charity. The original plan was a charity, and that it converted into for profit. It should not have done that. It should not have accepted the investment from Microsoft and things like that. So that argument is going on. He testified 3 days in a row basically. Now, one of the things is that Elon Musk is not very popular right now. A lot of people, in fact, there was a trouble getting the jury itself. The almost less than half of the jury candidates, they clearly suggested that they cannot control their biases against Elon Musk. Right? He's extremely unpopular because of his political activities, what he did at work, etc. It is also reflecting in Tesla's inventory, etc. So they have a real hard time getting the jury right, which is basically going to be fair and impartial. But that argument is going on. We'll see how that turns. My guess is that it probably will not change much, basically, but we'll see how the legal process takes place.
Yeah, that'll be turned into a book and a movie, I think, at some point. But that's a different topic for a different day. So let's talk about some launches. If you've been following OpenAI, you know that they've made certain changes over the last 3 months, like jettisoning Sora, and a lot of this was to focus on focus on core priorities or principles and the things that they need to develop. Well, part of that, I'll call it restructuring, was this notion is OpenAI working on a super app, kind of the thing that will pull together their various different tools to enable like this next generation app. Now, there's a lot of speculation that that might be happening right in front of our eyes with Codex. So I think a lot of people, same thing is true with Anthropic Claude Code, is that a lot of people get I'll call it maybe intimidated, afraid, whatever, when they hear the word code in some type of product or offering. So what Codex is, roughly speaking, is similar to Claude Code or or GitHub Copilot CLI as an example. But it brings in a lot of these tools and features. It's more for than just developing code, but it's got capabilities in there to enable computer browsing, do routine tasks on your behalf. Well, OpenAI has come up with a major refresh to the Codex desktop app this past week. So it brings in a redesigned onboarding flow, and it's meant for, in this case, a broader professional use. So that brings in faster computer use and browsing actions. Literally, it's 20% quicker than what you had seen before, plus annotation tools for marking up pages and artifacts directly. So what this leans towards is, yes, Codex really good at code, right? But it's also aligning with more of these business processes and more than just a coder being able to do other things. Now, other than that, there's a couple of what I'm going to call stealth additions added into Codex. One of them is a remote desktop connector that allows Codex to actually operate apps on other machines. So now you think about it is that, yes, Codex runs on your local machine, but now I can connect into other interconnected tools that might be running on different servers, different laptops, depending on what you have in your environment. So this is actually, if you think about an octopus, its arms are reaching out in potentially different other areas. It's got a keyboard remapping panel and also this pets avatars. Again, will all of these things make sense from a business perspective? I don't know, but there's more things that are being put in there. And the reason why I mentioned things like a pet's avatar, well, that might be aligned with or geared towards the casual consumer user rather than just a developer. That being said, there's from a developer standpoint, there's some new slash commands, specifically two of them. One is slash side, which allows for parallel chats, and then slash goal, which keeps long running objectives alive across various different terms, which is important because the larger and the more that I actually do with Codex, that that's where I want to control more what's happening within the agents that are running and how they're actually working on my behalf and their behavior. What's also interesting about this is that some regions in Europe still will not get this full browser or computer use features due to restrictions that are in those areas. And it comes back to my comment that this reinforces the notion from OpenAI that Codex will shift into this like super app for not only just for developers but for knowledge workers. And I think this is ultimately what the push is for OpenAI to gear towards these agentic workflows rather than just, hey, here's my Chat GPT. So I think eventually maybe Codex changed its name because it's doing more than just doing code.
Hmm. Okay. Codex may become Apex.
Yeah.
uh, okay. One more quick launch actually from Microsoft side. This is basically an agent, right? So Microsoft introduced a legal agent in Word to automate contract review or like redlining or negotiation using structured domain specific workflows. Basically, what this agent does is, and particularly for the legal professionals, they have to do a lot of document work, right? Analyzing, changing, tracking, making sure that everything is grounded with the citations and things like that. So, this does is it analyzes all the legal documents. It can create the legal documents. It can compare the versions, identifies risk, obligations. So basically, very legal lingo based work that you can do with it, right? And it can add non-standard clauses, internal against the internal playbooks, for example. It can generate precise negotiation ready edits with track changes. It uses a deterministic editing engine and document aware parsing. So um, it just basically makes a lot of legal paralegal kind of work very easy to do by throwing the playbook. It's basically part of the overall agentic capabilities that Microsoft is pushing into the entire Microsoft 365 suite. Just this week also actually the agentic capabilities in Excel also actually went live. They recreated a new ad which is a iconical ad about, my spreadsheet doesn't do that, right? It's a famous actually ad of people in the elevator and they're watching that how two people are working on the Excel. They recreated that for the agentic capabilities now. So there is a lot of agentic capabilities coming in the Microsoft 365, including this legal agent in the world. Okay.
Cool.
With that, I think it's a wrap on the week, Jamie.
Yeah,
You
yeah, definitely. There's a lot of it always amazes me is that there's no shortage of things to talk about. And when you look at our this is a little bit behind the scenes show notes here, if you will. We always curate various different news articles and determine what will make it on the air. And it always, I can't say it surprises me anymore, but there's at least 50%, if not 100% more that we leave out. So there's no shortage of things to talk about from each week. So yeah, otherwise we can make this a 3-hour podcast every week.
True. All right.
All right,
Everybody enjoy a good weekend and keep listening.
take care. See you, everybody.
Bye, Jamie. Bye, everyone.